How I found my wife with a cab driver, a true story of betrayal. I never thought I'd be here, writing this. Emily and I had been married for 5 years, and while I wouldn't say our marriage was perfect, it felt okay to me. We always got along, laughed a lot, and I felt like she supported me as much as I supported her. We didn't have kids, by mutual agreement, and it always felt like the right decision to focus on our careers and enjoy each other. But about 6 months ago, things started to change. In seemingly small ways, Emily started taking an Uber to work more often, instead of taking her own car, citing convenience. She found a regular driver named Jason and started using his service regularly. At the time, I didn't think much of it, just thought it was convenient for her. Who would have thought that these frequent trips would be the beginning of the end? At first, she just mentioned him in passing, that he was a nice guy, that he was always fun to talk to. But soon her stories about him began to increase. Jason said this, Jason thinks so, Jason would have liked you. I laughed back then, saying that she had a new friend who was a driver, not suspecting that it would develop into something more. At some point, I noticed that she was staying late after work. The excuses were always different: I was visiting a friend, my colleagues and I had to finish a project, or I just wanted to take a walk, clear my head. At that moment, I believed everything, because I never had a reason to distrust her. Emily had always been confident in herself, and I never doubted her honesty. But something in her behavior began to bother me. She became more irritable. Any ordinary comment from me made her fly into a rage. She began to lie about little things, even about things that did not make sense. I started noticing little inconsistencies in her words, but I tried to ignore them. After all, we all make mistakes sometimes, right? At the time, I didn't realize that her mistakes and wrong dates weren't just carelessness. My suspicions began to grow when she came home much later than usual one evening. She said she was at a meeting with colleagues, but she seemed too relaxed for someone who had spent the whole day at work and was supposed to be tired after that. That evening, I noticed that her phone was on silent, although she always left it on, even when we were together. I didn't think the worst at the time. I guess I didn't want to. But her detachment, frequent taxi rides, and constant talk about another man began to add up. I tried not to react. I didn't want to seem paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One day, I decided to check her phone. It was late at night, when she was already asleep. I felt like shit for invading her privacy, but curiosity and concern got the better of me. When I picked up the phone, there was no message from Jason, even though she'd mentioned him so often in conversations. That surprised me. Then I opened her gallery and saw several photos, clearly taken from inside her car. Some of them were taken while she was smiling at the camera, but next to her, in the reflection of the mirror, I saw the figure of a man. Jason. That was the first real moment when I felt like everything was really falling apart. I closed the phone, went back to bed and couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Everything inside me was turning over. I felt stupid for not noticing everything for so long, and at the same time I couldn't believe that things could have gone this far. The next day, I tried to talk to her without pretending to know anything. I asked how her trip was and why she was always with this Jason. Emily answered without thinking, well, he's always there when I need him. Plus, he's a great guy. I don't see any reason not to go on trips with him. But her answer was so casual, so indifferent, that anger boiled inside me. I knew these weren't just trips. After that conversation, something inside me snapped. Emily was lying to my face, and it was obvious. But instead of continuing to act like nothing had happened, I decided to wait a little longer and gather more evidence. I felt like she was playing with me, and now my job was not to find out the truth, but to catch her in a lie when she least expected it. Over the next few weeks, I watched her behavior. Every word, every little thing she said seemed suspicious. She began to leave the house more often, citing the fact that she needed to clear her head or visit a friend. But I knew that all of this was a lie. One night she said she was going out to dinner with her friends, but a couple of hours later I got a text from a friend who saw her car parked outside a hotel in the city center. This wasn't a place to meet her friends, it was a hotel where people with something to hide stayed. My patience was wearing thin. I couldn't just sit there and wait for her to lie to my face again. Deciding it was time to take action, I rented a hidden camera and installed it in her car. I knew she often rode with Jason in his Uber, but sometimes took her own car if they were planning something outside of a work context. A few days after installing the camera, Emily announced she was going to a friend's house again. I didn't say a word, just nodded and wished her a good evening. The next day, I returned home early and decided to check the footage from the camera. My heart was pounding as I connected it to my laptop. When the video loaded, I saw Emily in the car. At first, nothing unusual, she sat down, looked in the mirror, fixed her hair. But then I saw Jason, her driver, sit down in the passenger seat. They exchanged a few words, and then, she kissed him. Without hesitation, without doubt. That kiss was the last straw for me. I realized that she had been lying to my face all this time. Everything I thought I knew came crashing down in an instant. I was seething with rage and pain, but at the same time, I felt a strange relief. Now I had proof. Now I could finally confront her with complete confidence that I was right. The next day, I couldn't look at her the same way. Emily came home late, as always, pretending to be tired and dissatisfied, as if she was fed up with all her responsibilities. She threw her bag on the couch and quickly walked past me into the bedroom without saying a word. I didn't bring up the subject at that moment, I needed to prepare. Everything inside me was burning, but I knew I had to keep my cool. That evening, I sat in the living room and went over the plan in my head. I could just show her the footage from the camera, throw all the facts in her face, but something in me wanted her to lie first, so that she wouldn't have a chance to justify herself or make up new lies. Her hypocrisy was driving me crazy, and I wanted to see how she would wriggle out of it. The next day, I set a little trap. We were sitting at dinner and I asked her how her day was and if she was going to meet up with her friends again. She smiled slightly and said, "No, we canceled today, I'm just going home after work." I felt my insides twist when I heard that, but I held back. I asked casually, "How's Jason? You haven't mentioned him in a while." She immediately tensed up, but quickly pulled herself together. "Oh, I haven't traveled with him in a while, I think he changed his schedule." "I don't know, I don't really care who drives me," she answered calmly. I knew she was lying. And at that moment, I decided it was time. The words I'd been holding back for so long finally burst out. "Emily, that's enough. I know everything." Her face changed in an instant. She looked at me with bewilderment, then her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" she asked coldly. I didn't drag it out. I took out my phone, opened the video from the camera and placed it on the table in front of her. She looked at the screen and turned pale. The video clearly showed her kissing Jason right in her car. "You mean you haven't seen him in a while?" I asked sarcastically, trying to contain my anger. Her reaction was instantaneous. Instead of remorse or an apology, she exploded. "How dare you follow me? This is illegal," she screamed, grabbing the phone and throwing it on the floor. Her reaction shocked me. Instead of justifying herself or at least trying to explain, she immediately went on the offensive. "Are you crazy? You're following me. This is disgusting," she screamed, not even thinking about admitting her guilt. Emily always knew how to turn any situation to her advantage, and now she was trying to make me the culprit. Her face contorted with rage, and she began to scream, waving her arms. "This is your fault. You don't understand me. You were never there when I needed you." She started listing all the possible complaints, as if trying to justify her betrayal. I sat and looked at her, feeling the emptiness growing inside me. She was always like this, she knew how to turn the facts around and make a monster out of me, even when she was to blame. And now she played this role to the fullest. It's not what you think. It's just a kiss. Nothing happened between Jason and me, she added, trying to confuse the situation even more. I knew it was a lie. Her face, her reaction, everything gave her away. But what struck me most was that she didn't even try to apologize. For her, this was just another game that she always won. I picked up the phone from the floor, looking at her as calmly as I could. Emily, I'm not an idiot. You expect me to believe you after what I saw. You're making out with him in the car, and before that, you tell me you're not even dating him. You lied to my face. She looked at me with hatred, but quickly tried to change tactics. Okay, yeah, maybe it was a mistake. But that's no reason to react like that. It's just a stupid kiss, nothing more. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill. She continued to dodge, hoping that I would fall for her tricks. But I was not going to play her games anymore. I was tired of the lies, tired of the manipulations. I looked at her and felt how all my feelings for her were slowly dying. Emily continued to scream and rush around the room, as if this could be her victory in another quarrel. She threw out every excuse she could think of, trying to convince me that her betrayal was a trifle, that the kiss meant nothing. But every time she opened her mouth, it became clearer to me, there was nothing left between us a long time ago. Just a kiss. Do you really think I'll believe that? Do you think I'm that stupid? I said, trying to remain calm, although a storm was raging inside. I no longer recognized the woman I was married to. The lies oozed from her lips with such ease, as if she believed her own fictions. Not only did you lie to me, but you also constantly tried to convince me that everything was fine. Emily, instead of apologizing, tried to turn everything around on me again. It's all because of you. You were never home. All you think about is work, and I was lonely. Her voice was cracking with hysteria, but there was no sincerity in it, only manipulation. I was lonely, she screamed. I needed communication. You never listened to me. You are always busy with your own shit, and I should have found solace. She tried to portray herself as a victim, but this time her words did not hurt me like before. If you were lonely, why didn't you tell me? Why did you decide to lie, cheat, and betray me instead? I asked, still trying to find at least a trace of logic in her actions. But all I got in response was another wave of accusations. You brought our marriage to this point. You're the one who made me look for something on the side. Her voice was shaking, but it wasn't fear or remorse, it was rage at being caught. She couldn't bear the thought of not being in control anymore. I once loved, became a stranger. And as soon as this realization hit me, I felt the last bit of pain from betrayal give way to cold acceptance. I'm filing for divorce, Emily, I said calmly. My words sounded like a hammer blow. Emily froze in place, her face distorted by a mixture of bewilderment and rage. What did you say? She looked at me as if she couldn't believe her ears. But I wasn't going to repeat myself. I saw her shock, and that was enough. You can't be serious. You're filing for divorce because of some stupid kiss. She began to rush around the room, as if trying to find a way out of the situation. But I saw that her hysteria was not the fear of losing me, but the fear of losing control of the situation and her comfortable life. It's not just a kiss, Emily, I said quietly, trying to contain my anger. You lied to me for weeks, if not months. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think you could keep playing these games? Her reaction was even more astonishing. She changed her tone from hysterical to contemptuous. So what? You want a divorce? Great. You think anyone else would want to live with you, a controlling, paranoid person like you? You've only been looking out for yourself your whole life. You're the one who ruined everything. Her words were full of venom. She wasn't going to give in without a fight. But I couldn't feel anything for her anymore, no pain, no pity. She had ruined everything we had with her hypocrisy and lies. All that was left was a feeling of utter devastation. I was tired of her manipulations, tired of her games. "You leave me no choice," I said calmly. "I can't live with a man who constantly lies and betrays me. This is the end." Emily looked at me with hatred. "You'll regret this. You don't know who you're dealing with. I won't leave you alone." Her voice was filled with a threat. But I was ready. I wasn't afraid of her words anymore. I left the room, leaving her alone. The next day, I started the divorce process. After that conversation, an oppressive silence reigned in the house. Emily stopped throwing tantrums, but her presence became unbearable. We lived in the same apartment, but it was as if we were in different worlds. I saw her anger, but I also felt that she was preparing for something, perhaps for another attack, for a new maneuver. She never gave up so easily. I had already filed for divorce. The process had begun, and the lawyer warned me that Emily would try to do everything to get the most out of the situation. And I knew he was right. She was not the kind of person who accepts defeat. Every time we found ourselves in the same room, she would glare at me, and I could read in her eyes a plan for revenge. A couple of days after the process began, Emily started her games again. One evening, when I came home, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked calmly, as if nothing had happened. I ignored her attempts to get me back into her game. She didn't deserve an answer. Then, a couple of days later, she suddenly said, "I hope you realize that this isn't going to be easy. This divorce is going to cost you dearly." She said it in a tone that sounded like she was warning me of some inevitable punishment. "You made me seek solace elsewhere, and now you're trying to leave me. But I'll take everything I can from you." Her voice was calm, but there was a threat in it. Her words didn't scare me. They only confirmed what I already knew. For her, this wasn't about love or regret. It was always about control, about coming out on top. She would never admit her mistake, never show vulnerability. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I just continued to ignore her, doing everything necessary to keep the process going. My goal was only one thing, to end it as quickly as possible and leave this chapter of my life behind. But I knew that she would not stop there. Despite my ignoring her, Emily began to act more and more aggressively. Her strategy changed. Now she tried to irritate me, trying to provoke a conflict. She understood that if I lost my temper, she could use it against me in court or at least feel in control of the situation again. One day, I came home and found that she had thrown my things out of the bedroom. All my shirts, jeans, documents, everything was lying on the floor. She just smirked when I entered the room. "I thought it would be better for you to sleep in the living room. Or outside." "I don't care." Her voice was cold. She did not even try to hide her pleasure from this. I silently gathered my things and carried them to the guest room. I was too tired of her manipulations to give in to her provocations. She was waiting for me to explode, but I wasn't going to let her. All I wanted was to end this whole nightmare. But she wasn't going to give in. Her new tactics included calling and texting me at all hours of the day and night, even when I was at work. She would ask to discuss the details of the divorce, then accuse me of all of this being your fault. One day, she even sent me a text message that said, "Jason was so much better than you in every way." That message was meant to hurt me, but I just deleted it. Her words no longer mattered. The real blow came when a couple of days later, she put my car up for collateral, claiming that I had authorized it myself. It turned out that she had somehow forged the paperwork and used my signature. When I found out about this, I couldn't just sit back. I consulted a lawyer and we filed additional lawsuits to reverse her actions. But this was the last straw for me. I could no longer tolerate her constant attempts to ruin my life. After I found out about her car shenanigans, my patience snapped. I could no longer allow Emily to destroy everything around me with impunity. This time, I decided to take decisive action and put her in her place. That evening, I returned home determined to end this. She was again sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, pretending that nothing was happening. "Do you really think you're going to get away with this?" I said, my voice cold and furious, glancing at her. She looked up, smirking. "What are you even talking about?" Her voice was full of sarcasm, as if she was the one in control. "The car. The fact that you signed the papers on my behalf," I replied, feeling my insides boil. Emily didn't blink. "Oh, yeah. I figured if you were going to dump me, I should at least get something in return," she said it so calmly, as if she were talking about something mundane, as if we were discussing grocery shopping and not betrayal. "I've already filed additional lawsuits." "You won't be able to pull off your scam," I said. Her face changed for a moment, but she quickly pulled herself together. "What, did you file lawsuits?" She laughed again. "You think you can win this game? You've always been weak, and you've always lost. You're pathetic. You can't handle me." Her voice was full of contempt. She was clearly trying to make me explode again. I didn't feel anger anymore. It was fatigue now. "This will all be over soon, Emily. I'll make sure you're punished for everything you've done," I said, leaving her alone with her own poison. At that moment, I realized that this marriage was over a long time ago. I felt no regret or desire to fix anything. All I wanted was freedom. After that conversation, I finally decided that I would no longer participate in her games. Emily continued to try to irritate me by making scenes every time I was home. She screamed, threw things, threatened to ruin my life. But I didn't care anymore. I moved in with a friend while the divorce was going on. One day, already in the final stages of the divorce, I came home to collect the rest of my things. The house was empty, Emily was gone. As I entered the living room, I heard a noise outside. When I went outside, I saw her with Jason. They were sitting in his taxi, but this time it was not an innocent conversation. Contrary to my worst expectations, they were having betrayal right in the front seat of his car. That was the moment when I realized that this person was not only a cheater and a liar, but also the complete personification of shamelessness. I felt neither anger nor jealousy. I simply closed the door, took my things and left. From that moment on, neither she nor their relationship existed for me. All that was now interested in was completing the divorce as quickly as possible. The divorce lasted for a couple more months, but fortunately, all her attempts to delay the process failed. My lawyer turned out to be much more prepared than hers, and all her machinations with the car were annulled. Financially, she received practically nothing, thanks to the competent division of property, which I took care of in advance. Emily tried to leave something behind, tried to make me feel sorry for her, but I didn't believe a word she said anymore. She tried to file counterclaims, accused me of stalking her, but her lies had no legal force. After the divorce, I finally felt free. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe calmly. I began to slowly rebuild my life, return to my hobbies, began to spend more time with friends who supported me throughout this nightmare. Emily continued to write to me from time to time, sometimes threatening, sometimes apologizing. But I no longer responded. For me, she became just a ghost from the past that I did not want to bring back into my life. This experience taught me a lot. I realized that you can't close your eyes to warning signs and ignore your suspicions. Emily has always been a manipulator, and if I had paid attention to her behavior earlier, then perhaps I would not have brought everything to such an end. But now I know that I will never again allow anyone to treat me the way she did. If you feel that something is wrong with your partner, if you notice lies, manipulation and betrayal, do not expect the situation to correct itself. Do not try to justify their behavior or turn a blind eye to it. Your happiness and self-respect are most important. Sometimes the best way out is to leave, despite all the pain and uncertainty. But believe me, a new, better life awaits you.